Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good morning. This is episode 15 of the PIO podcast. Today we're going to have PIO Sarah Boyd and Sgt Jake Becchina from the Kansas City Police Department on. I moved this episode forward a few because of the coming end of the Derek Chauvin trial. They dealt with the unrest in Kansas City over the summer, and that unrest was handled in a kind of a really textbook way of dealing with it. And I felt maybe not every PIO's had a chance to read the article that was published in Police Chief magazine, and I thought perhaps hearing their interview ahead of time might help you be able to make some pivots or changes to your plan in advance of the outcome of the trial. Either way, whatever happens with the outcome of the trial, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of unrest or protest in some way, one way or the other. And I believe there's some merit in the information that they have to provide. Without any further ado, here is PIO Sarah Boyd and PIO Sgt Jake Becchina from the Kansas City Police Department.
We're good.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So how long have you guys had public information unit or a media unit?
I think going back to 1968.
Yeah, there's always been some matter of public information. I think in its current form, I want to say mid 1980s. With a rank structure and some assigned PIOs and public relations specialists.
And how big is your unit?
So we have three public information officers and three public relations specialists and an administrative assistant, and then a liaison to our Crime Stoppers tips hotline, which is off-site. So a total of 8.
Wow. And how big is the department overall?
Right about 1,400 is our allotment. We're just under that now. We fluctuate in the 1,300s.
1,400 sworn.
Yes.
Okay.
About 550 non-sworn.
So your unit is fairly comparable in size to what they would call the media unit over at CPD. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
so
some of those positions aren't filled right now, by the way.
Yeah, we're not full. We're not full with 8, but that's interesting.
They have designated. They have a one designated PIO, which is Tom Ahern, who used to be with the ATF, who replaced Anthony.
Anthony?
Yeah. We know
I know
Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony and AI, man, I wish I would have, but yeah, he's a great guy. But then they have officers in the districts that handle their social media, and they're not really considered part of the media unit. They just handle the social media for the district. So in the grand scheme of things, they're a relatively small unit. But they do, the one thing I think is unique is they have a media car. So they have a car on the street 24 hours a day that their sole job is to handle calls and to go to those calls, either do the public information part of it or just to record stuff so that they have file footage for whatever they're putting out.
So who does that if they only have one PIO?
Well, they have one designated, the big speaker, that's the Tom Ahern, and then they've got a sergeant that is the sworn portion of the unit, and then they've got regular officers that handle media inquiries that come in, and then they've only got a handful of administrative personnel.
Got it.
It's a relatively, if you think of the grand scheme of it, it's a relatively small unit for the size
of the department.
Yeah, because they're about 3 times the size of it. No, more than that.
How many sworn do you
They have
have?
11,000.
12. They're supposed to be at 12. My guess is at any given day, there's probably maybe 9,000 that are actually on this, available to work.
So they have 10 times our size. Then.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
All right. So, Sarah, what's your background?
So I was a newspaper reporter reporter before I came here. I have a journalism degree, and I worked in a suburb of Kansas City at a daily newspaper covering courts, crime, and schools. And I did that for 3 years until I saw the opening here and was tired of being poor and overworked. And so then I came here.
Oh, so you went to the police department to be poor and
Right,
overworked.
right. Government money, right? At least I got dental insurance when I came here. That was
That's always the issue with people in the media. My daughter's works for a news station up in Madison, Wisconsin. And, when they talk about all the $15 an hour benefit stuff, my daughter's got a 4-year degree and she's making $15.25 an hour when you boil it down.
Yeah. I made $12 an hour there.
Yeah.
To start. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Jake, so what's your background?
Yeah, so just a cop that landed himself as a PIO in the media unit. I've got a little bit of experience in our tactical operations, our version of a SWAT team. Spent some time as an academy instructor for a period of time for advanced training, continuing education. Did some as a sergeant, obviously patrol, did some investigative support, intelligence gathering, worked in our real-time crime center, supervised some operations there, and then most recently came over here to the media unit nearly 3 years ago.
So were you transferred in, or I should say, were you voluntold or did you volunteer?
I asked for this,
okay,
and I get reminded a lot. I'll try to give you the most abbreviated short version. I was a newer sergeant. I got promoted in 2013. 2014, we saw a lot of unrest in the state of Missouri. Our friends across the state had some major issues associated with Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that bled over into issues in our city. We not quite to the scale we had last summer. However, we did have some unrest issues and we had some things. And I had a sector full of very young officers, and they would often ask me, why do these people hate us? Why is it something in another part of the country that affects the way that they see us? Things of that nature. And I kind of struggled for an answer. And so I really kind of did a deep dive into it. And I started really getting immersed in police community relations and how those can be affected and things that can be done proactively. And so, I kind of studied it. I read up on it, just became very interested in it. I maintained a close relationship with our media unit, the social media outreach that was already in place. I knew Sarah very well before being assigned here, talking through some of the things that we could do messaging wise proactively based on things I was seeing in the field. And all the while just continuing to do my job and just kind of, observe and report more than anything else. Then in 2018, the sergeant that was here, she moved on. She was promoted to captain and created a vacancy. And I expressed interest. I had some thoughts, I had some plans, I had some strategies, I had some things that I had at least been thinking about that I would like to at least try. And so, I asked for the opportunity. There were a few applicants at the time, and most of them are probably thankful they did not get it at this point, having what we went through last summer. But the chief saw fit to assign me here and give me that opportunity. And so it's been a huge learning experience. Like any job in a police environment, you think you know what that unit does until you get there, and then you realize how much you didn't know.
Oh yeah.
And so I've been working through that for nearly 3 years now. How much I didn't know and trying to learn that, and just every day trying to affect the public perception of our field and our department specifically, just through presence, through communication, through responsiveness, and through availability.
Oh, that sounds like somebody that knows what he wants to deal with and work at it. I mean, that's a good thing. And I think if we had more supervisors on the street that were willing to dig that deep into something, you'd have a lot better prepared staff on the street level that would make a bigger impact if that were to happen. Sure. So kudos to you guys for that. So my whole reason for wanting to talk to you guys is because I read an article about KCPD. And it was awesome. I mean, it's a textbook written way of dealing with unrest and how you paid attention to things that are going on. So when I read this article in Police Chief Magazine talking about the unrest that started over the summer with the George Floyd incident, I was like, okay, I got to talk to you guys and ask questions. I want to know some things that what you did. So you took some early steps prior to the protests before it occurred. What'd you do before it occurred?
Yeah, so the George Floyd incident happened on Memorial Day in Minneapolis, and we saw tensions building here, and we were getting a lot of questions on social media about our policies and procedures, how we handle de-escalation training, what our policies are on use of force and that kind of thing. So we set up. I just added a page to our website with frequently asked questions, the ones we were getting so much of, and tried to answer them. I directed them to our, what kind of training we do. We directed them to our policies on use of force. I also, in anticipation, provided information on our social media and on our webpage about our protest policies, what we do at those events, what people could expect of us, what we would expect of people attending those events. So we thought that would be good, that people would see, we would have answered their questions. They would know, this is how we'll all get along when we protest. And we thought that was going to be pretty well covered.
So those requests, were they primarily from private citizens, or were they a combination of private citizens and news media?
I was seeing mostly the private citizen ones that were coming, like questions on social media. Did you get a few? I handle more of the social media. He handles more of the news media. Yeah,
we didn't get a lot prior to Friday. Friday was our first big day of protest in our city. We didn't have to the media, it's what's happening today as opposed to looking forward. I think the early communication was driven more towards private citizens and received more by private citizens. The media was not as interested. If they covered protests, they covered what was happening nationally, not necessarily here, until Friday night.
Okay, so Sarah, just to follow up with that though, do you think those private citizens were people that were planning to protest and wanted to know your policies so that they could counteract them?
I don't doubt that could have been the case. I mean, I don't have proof by any means, but I certainly think that some of the people we heard from who were asking those questions were some of the people that police encountered at the protest, for sure.
Okay. So on the 30th of May, you guys go ahead and you deployed your 3 PIOs and created a staging area for them. How did you guys handle that influx of social media and try and manage that misinformation that was getting pushed out?
Well, I would clarify the 30th, we were not so organized and together.
No,
the 29th was our first. The 30th was the Saturday.
Okay.
So I get my days mixed up a little bit. So the 29th we muddled through. The 30th was a more coordinated deployment. Some people remotely and some people on scene. The entire team was at least tied in starting on Saturday. Some in person and some remotely. I think
I was at home.
You and Beth were from home, and we had 2 PIOs that were on scene there, and I was remote. And we were just triaging. At that point in time, it was a tidal wave of media inquiries and social media messages, and so the big thing I think that day, from a perspective of PIO versus social media, is the public relations folks that were dealing with the social media were doing a good job of keeping us up to date every hour or so of just kind of what the temperature was in the messages, what some of the common themes were. And then that began what this kind of morphed into was a combo of trying to answer the public's questions and speak to the concerns of the public through the media. When we gave our addresses, our hourly updates and things like that to the media. Many times we would begin an hourly update and we would talk about it amongst ourselves with the PIOs, and much of what the information we were getting from social media drove what the theme was or what our content was, at least starting out. With our hourly briefings. So we picked the topics really. It would morph and there would be, something would happen in the meantime, but that would cause questions from the media in a live setting. but largely we picked the starting point for whatever that hourly briefing was.
And I would watch their briefings
Mhm.
and listen to them and kind of echo what they said, like, hey, there've been this many arrests, or this is, like some of the things that they were updating, I was updating as well. So I'm at home watching all of this, and my kids, which was really fun. And so we were trying to really communicate back and forth what we were seeing, because they didn't have the time out there to watch social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is all at the same time we have a pandemic too, which is
Yeah.
not exactly like not conducive to put together a JIC or anything like that.
No.
Correct.
I mean, that did end up happening the next day, but and the social media misinformation was it was really off the charts. I've worked at this department for 14 years, and I started our social media in 2009, and I've never seen anything
So,
like what we
Sarah,
saw.
talk about that, because you made a mention about social media accounts that you guys eventually blocked. And then what happened when you went back to go unblock those accounts?
So we blocked, and you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to block accounts as a government agency. Everybody should have access to your information. But like for my mental health, I was reading these things like in all my waking hours, and there was a lot. I was at work a lot more than, and I wasn't sleeping a whole lot, and reading these things constantly. So for my mental health, I blocked 4 of the most noxious accounts, the most toxic ones. One of them complained to a city council member. And it was just for a few days. I went back and unblocked that account, and I blocked the 4 that I had blocked, or I went back and unblocked them. And when I did, only the account of the person who complained to our city council member remained. All the other 3 of the 4 were gone. They were set up just to troll our account. And when they could not see our page or our page anymore on Twitter, they disappeared.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we saw, and I did a lot of research after this happened, because I had never seen anything like the amount of vitriol that we got. Like we have haters like everybody does in a large department. We've got 250,000 people who follow us on Twitter just about. And so some people are bound to not like us. And but this was like tens of thousands of people bombarding us constantly. And I didn't know what to do. Like all the engagement strategies that I've learned that I teach weren't working. And I was like, and I think a lot of it is because I wasn't dealing with like real people.
Right. You were dealing with a bot. You're dealing with a bot.
Yeah.
Probably that whole job was to just sow disinformation and dissent.
Yeah. And dissent and division. Yeah. And I spoke with a professor in cybersecurity in New York who studies this. And, I learned a lot after that. And we've gotten a lot better about identifying some of those accounts. And I mean, there were crazy rumors like that we sniped somebody and murdered them in the course of the protest. I mean, it was a mess.
We had a legitimate, I believe it was Sunday night.
Yeah.
The protest. There was a legitimate homicide within about 3 blocks of the protests. And it was there were 3 suspects, and it was a street robbery, and the victim was robbed and shot and died. And for 2 days after that, it was constant misinformation of people on Twitter saying things to the effect of, I watched the police sniper shoot him.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
this is the level of that it went to. 2 days later, our local newspaper, who, if there is a way to scrutinize our operations, they tend to be very good at that. They were struggling so much with the misinformation. They were trying to find any family member, anybody that could corroborate the actual story, because all they were muddling through was this misinformation, and they could tell that it wasn't productive or wasn't accurate.
Absolutely amazing. Sarah, how were you monitoring the social media, the information coming in? Do you guys are using a third-party app, or are you just using the native TweetDeck or Twitter account?
I just use we can't afford any third-party apps. So I was using the native, I was just bouncing around the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, answering questions people had, responding to inquiries that, weren't just F you. And and try and kind of report back what I was seeing. Saturday I was at home. Sunday I got called in to the emergency operations center. And I was kind of a jick in and of myself there. And I spent a lot of the week there. And there I was also by like some of our intel people. And so that was kind of nice because I could see what they were watching. They could see what I was watching. We were sharing a lot of things. We pulled up a lot of live video feeds that people were doing from the scene and watching those. That was really valuable.
All right. So you guys had started an information campaign, at least if I'm understanding the way the article was written, it was from the command that was on scene, and they wanted you guys to put out about the bottles and stuff that were being thrown at officers and causing injuries and stuff. When did you guys make the determination that messaging that was going out was having a negative impact on towards you guys?
That was mostly Sunday night. Yeah, so Sarah was at the EOC. We were on scene. I finally started to feel like I was contributing something to this. You know, as a PIO, you're kind of like, you know, the police are doing the stuff and you're talking about it. You're a cop, but they're doing cop stuff. It's just a weird dynamic in your mind. Mm-hmm. So I started taking pictures of the things that people were throwing at us. And some of them, like you would think, frozen water bottles, and some of them super strange, like a can of beans. All sorts of strange things. But I started taking pictures and I sent them to Sarah, and we said, let's put this out there. People need to see what we're dealing with. And we were using our normal accepted thought pattern that, you know, it's assumed that there is disorder. The general population expects the police to handle the disorder and to get it under control. And we were scrambling to align those messages.
Because we were getting a lot of heat for using tear gas and less lethal munitions.
So it was a scramble to align those paradigms, show the disorder, talk about what we're doing, and then the people will get it and they will legitimize it in their eyes, and we will be vindicated. And like that was the plan, and that was the idea. And I was going around taking pictures of these things, and I was getting, you know, high fives and thank yous and all of that from these officers on the line, like, thanks for showing people what we're dealing with, and sending it to Sarah. And Sarah had a different interpretation of how that was being received.
Nobody was high-fiving or thanking me on social media. So I made like a collage of some of those things people had thrown at us. And meanwhile, like, we're communicating, you know, hey, this has been declared an unlawful assembly. This is, you know, we're getting heat about using tear gas and what have you. And I'm saying, this is why we're doing it. These are the things that were thrown at officers. And we got a term that I learned during this time, ratioed. So we got like tens of thousands of negative comments on that post. So you get ratioed if you get more negative comments than you do likes. And it was overwhelming. Like, there was like, nobody was, and it was hard to muddle through. I couldn't possibly have read all of them, but so many, it was like at least 90% to 10%, like, you poor baby cops in your riot gear got hit with a can of beans. Wah, wah, you kill unarmed Black people. So I was like, guys, this isn't working. That was like, what, 11 o'clock at night or something? And I was like, this isn't working. I went home about midnight that night. Yeah. When did you guys go home?
It was about 2 a.m, I think. She tells me it's not working. I say, yeah. I'm going to take some more pictures of rocks and bottles and stuff. I'll be back. So it took a second to sink in.
So
Chicago did not do that when they had one of the last riots that we had here that really erupted. It was all around the Columbus statue in Columbus Park. And they did the opposite, where they waited until the next day, and then they broke the video down, and then they showed how the crowd changed, where they went from nobody wearing any dark clothing to all of a sudden wearing black clothing to having umbrellas and points on them, and then the bottles showed up, and so those groups that they're the professional protesters. They showed it after the fact because they needed to justify their actions that they, you know, when they made the arrest and when they took control the violent protests. So we're battling as a PIO. We got to battle that public perception more than anything. So I know.
And normally it works. Yeah, normally it works. That normally the majority of the population legitimizes our law enforcement actions.
Right.
And this was just something like we had never seen before. And it was fascinating because these negative comments then gave the context to the media to say our actions are not being supported by the community, whether they were real or not. It was, and that began this spin. And that is when it was readily apparent to Sarah first, because she's smarter, that it didn't matter that we were getting stuff thrown at us.
So, Sarah, do you think that some of the accounts that were pushing that volume, especially that volume to get to tens of thousands, do you think most of that was trolls from outside of Kansas City pushing other people, or?
Sure, some of it was. I know some of it was local, but with that amount of volume, it had to be. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it since. We felt like about 2 weeks after some of the worst days, like we felt like this feels normal again. This is our normal leveling of engagement with people. This is a normal amount of people who contact us every day on social media. And so I don't know, I can't imagine we ticked off that many people in such a short amount of time that followed us closely, you know? Twitter did a purge a couple months ago of bot accounts, and we lost 1,300 followers at that time.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. I did see that article about them making the purge. All right. So you guys made a pivot after this happened, and you guys went to, and we'll use that phrase, we hear you. So I have two questions for you with this. When you made the pivot, go over that. And then did you get that idea from somewhere else, or was that something you guys came up with organically?
Well, I mean, so we came in, that after Sunday night, and Jake was feeling amazing about sharing all those rocks and bottles pictures. And I was like, and our chief was saying, we need to put video out of what's happening out there, of how violence is being perpetrated against them. And everybody's like, yeah, I was like, guys, stop. We can't do this. There's nothing, we're not gaining anything from this. Police can't play the victim right now. There are protests around the country about police brutality. So even if we are getting things thrown at us, no one is sympathetic to us being victims right now. That's not going to get us anywhere. It's just going to further enrage people out there. I think the way that we end this is to change that message. And it was the only thing I could think of. The only other thing we can't be defensive here. The only thing we can say is we're trying to be better. We hear what you're saying. And so it was fairly organic, I think. It was the only alternative we had, was to say, to calm things down and to get the public to realize that we're trying to do better, was to say, we hear you. We couldn't, I didn't know what changes we were going to make yet, if we were going to make any changes, but I could say that we were listening. God knows I was reading tens of thousands of messages a day, and I was trying to pass that on. And I know the people down on the line were starting to make some changes too.
Oh,
yeah.
No, Jake, you were at the scene, so go ahead. You were gonna add something in there.
Yeah. So Monday was a big transitional day. We went away from rocks and bottles. We changed our messaging a little bit, slowly but surely. Me personally, I kind of made the decision, like, okay, I'm going to embrace this and let's go with it and see what happens. So I would intentionally, that you can shape the tone so many times in the way you describe what the community does and then what we do in response to it. And the way that we describe what is unlawful behavior, throwing things at officers, assaulting officers with projectiles, walking in the street and shutting down traffic, all of that, you can describe that in a couple of different tones. And so what I started trying out was, and what we ended up landing on is just literally just de-emphasize the criminality of that and the severity of that as much as I possibly could. And so in some of our hourly briefings, we were close enough to the action that you could see it and hear it, but we were far enough away that we were out of danger. You couldn't throw something and hit us there. So the media had a pretty good view. And so I can vividly remember in one of our hourly briefings, it was early evening, it was still light out. And I looked over and like, I see all the looks on the face of the reporters change. And I look over and I could see at that point in time, there was just an orchestrated volley of rocks, bottles, things being hurled at officers. And it was clearly visible and they were recording it all. And my every inclination, every bone in my PIO body was like, see, look what they're doing. See how they're acting. That's why we're doing that. And I bit my tongue and I said, yeah, they're frustrated. They're expressing their frustrations and our officers are over there listening to them. And just that was it. Right. And then I noticed that the reporters then said, well, yeah, but they're throwing things at you guys. So they reported the things the public was doing, not me.
Okay.
And so it started to kind of work. And we just, we built on it. Later that night, this was a big thing for me. And this was not my doing, but we happened to see it. Later that night, the chief the chief had an overarching look and he had a good view of it. And they had a really crucial conversation between the operations commander and the chief. Late that night, after the sun went down, we had continued to be face to face for 3+ days. And the chief, to his credit, he said, why don't we try taking a step back? And they did that. There's the picture on the Police Chief Magazine article at the headline of it. There's a picture of some officers, and you see probably 40 or 50 feet away a bunch of protesters. That was right after we took a step back because I was like, I want a picture of this. I want to see what happens. The protesters had been in the street. The police had been in the street. The police took a step back. The protesters took a step back into the park. They were out of the street in that picture, if you see, or maybe on the edge of it. They had been 30 feet further into the street before that.
I mean, they were face to face.
Face to face, yeah, yes.
3 days.
And so the combination of we hear you, that we're being advised of, and that I'm kind of, playing with a little bit. The combination of that and taking a step back, I said, I think we got something here. I said to the PIOs there at the scene, said to Sarah, I said, this is kind of a watershed moment in this whole situation. I can see it. We have some of the smartest, most well-trained police officers in the country. I believe that. I know people say that at every department. I truly believe that about mine. We're going to be okay in this. We have smart people that figure things out, and people are going to see that this worked. They're going to see our communications, and this is our way forward from here.
Okay. So you guys used a combination of de-escalating the messaging, de-escalating the chief came up with de-escalating the intention between the crowd and the police officers. And then you used the media to message for you without you actually saying anything about what was going on. You actually, yeah. So very nice.
When you say it that way, it sounds pretty simple.
Well,
right?
It's not that simple if you don't recognize it when it's happening. That's the amazing thing. You were able to catch yourself before you said the obvious thing that you wanted to say, and you let them do it for you, which was, kudos to you for doing it.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it worked out as best as it could, I think.
So how did you address the pressures of telling positive stories about the department after the protest?
That was hard because we got a lot of pushback from command staff who wanted us to start putting out how great police were from the get-go and how great our officers were. And I was like, yeah, I know they are, but it would be tone deaf for us to do that right now. I took a lot of heat, and I still don't think people agree. Some people in our department agree with what I did. But I knew that the time would be right when we could start sharing the good stories of our officers in the community again. We couldn't just shut We Hear You down after the week and a half of protests we had. The most intense ones were over. So we had to keep, so most of my messaging continued to be like, we're working on updating this policy. We're making these changes. So I kind of eased into it about 2 weeks afterward. We did do one, I tested the waters during the week and showed a picture of some of the public quietly came out and donated tons of stuff to our department. Like our police stations were full of bottled water, snacks, sunscreen for all the officers who were out working the lines. There was a lot of quiet support, but people were too afraid to say it publicly. So I showed some pictures of that, and that went over like that was like about a 10-to-1 ratio of likes to negative comments. And so I was like, okay, we might be getting there, but what I waited for was some user generated content. So people out on social media to say great things about us, and then me share that. So that way it's not us telling the story, it's other people telling that. So I started to see some of that about 2 weeks after the worst of our protests were over. So I started sharing that, and then I kind of eased into sharing. The first thing that I shared from us really was, we had a rookie officer who was on break-in with her FTO, and he stopped in the middle of the road and had her pick up a turtle, and the turtle peed all over her while she was trying to get it out of the road. And that was the first like lighthearted thing, good like thing that I had posted since the protest. And that was and like how can you hate on that, right? Like it was, and it was funny, and that was kind of our turning point with starting to go back and share the stories again. But you can't when you are the subject of a protest, of you're the brutal police, quote unquote, you can't go out there and talk about how you helped an old lady cross the street. I mean, it's not the time to do it. You can't. We've seen other.
Was the command staff's reason for wanting that out there was just their hopes of trying to make the staff feel better?
No, I feel like our social media strategy, our public information strategy has always been, we exist, public relations exists to paint an organization in a positive light and to relate with the public. So our strategy has largely been surrounded with, showing good things police do, telling good police stories. And it wasn't our command staff's fault. They by nature of it, they weren't as tied into it as we were. And so they didn't have that close, that feeling as good as we did. So, but it wasn't their fault, but they thought, well, let's do what we've always done to fix this.
Okay.
And that's, and that was kind of like that. They weren't wrong. They weren't off base. They were, employing time-honored tradition or time-honored logic to fix a problem. And the problem was different.
And just so much of what we have learned this year was we can't do things the way we've always done them. We couldn't do protest tactics the way we've always done them. We couldn't do social media the way we've always done it. It was different. It was fundamentally different. And I'm the one who reads messages every day. Like most of our command staff isn't even on social media, so they don't see the tenor. They don't see the tone that's out there and what me, throwing a "yay for us" story out there would look like.
So,
and it was hard too. One of the important aspects from a PIO standpoint, any sworn member that's a PIO knows the feeling of being on an island. You aren't truly a cop anymore to some of the cops, and obviously to the public and the media, you still are part of the department. And so you are on an island. And I got so much in those early days, suggestions from close friends and expressions of frustrations. I took phone calls from some really close friends on this job that had some strong opinions about the way we were addressing the media and reporting what was going on, and wanted us to do these things. And why aren't you helping us? And why aren't you telling the what we're going through? And it was so hard to take that from both sides, taking it from social media, taking the scrutinizing questions from the media, and then my brothers and sisters over my shoulder that are getting stuff thrown at them, expecting me to stand up for them. It was a really lonely place to be. The thing that I came up with, that I kept circling back to, was that we did not get into this job for public approval. We didn't get into this job to be liked. We got into this job to serve others and to serve people and to help them be the best version of themselves. That service doesn't come with conditions. And I kept saying that over and over again. And I told my friends that. I said, it's being tested now more than ever, but that service doesn't come with conditions. We did not swear an oath to show up if the people like us. And so we really had to draw on that. And we just really had to lean into that heavily and use that for the strength to kind of get through those tough few weeks.
Well, it sounds like you guys, you did an awful lot to make some changes and to make those pivots, and very tough ones. I was in command for 15 years and a PIO for those 15 years. And I know what you're feeling. I know I heard it from my chief. I've heard it from my commanders. I heard it from my sergeants whenever something went bad. Like, why aren't you talking about us? Why aren't you talking about us? We can't always do that. Great points. Jake, did you guys do any kind of internal messaging with your staff at all?
Not really.
Not as well. And we talked about this. Like, we don't know how we would have done this better. There was internal messaging of thank you for what you're all doing out there. Like, for messages from the chief. We know everyone came in on their day off. We know, you've canceled vacations. We know that. But there wasn't really a good way to tell them, hey, we're going to switch strategies to a we hear you message so we can get you off the line. I hope that afterward they realized that what we were doing benefited them, that they weren't face to face getting yelled at and having stuff thrown at them anymore. But I don't know how. I wish it could have been done better, but I don't know how we could have done it better.
Yeah, when we went over these questions before this to kind of get ready, who was going to say what, that was a head scratcher for both of us. I don't know what we could have done differently or said differently
to get the buy-in.
Yeah, because there wasn't logic surrounded it. It was so much more art than science, and it was it was definitely a work of art. Some say beautiful, some say horrible. We just really, we had to learn as we go, and many times we didn't really know what we were doing. When we were doing it, it was just a lot of it was intuition, and
this feels like the right thing to do. Yeah. Let's try it.
We just had to trust. It was again a leap of faith from an island. We had to trust that what we were doing was the best as far as what we knew as public information professionals, and trust that it would be the best for our officers.
Well, I think you guys did a great job. Like I said, the article was a textbook about how to pivot, make changes, and deal with an extremely difficult situation. I know what's going to potentially happen with the outcome of the trial is going to be a huge impact for every jurisdiction in the country, and I hope they're all planning. I hope everybody's working with their public information officers and their staff to get that messaging ready and plan for that. You guys came up with a series of things that you thought were lessons learned. Could you guys recap them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think the switch from the rocks and bottles to the we hear you messaging, pairing that with like the similar actions of de-escalation on the ground, that significantly calmed the tensions, making those pivots, backing off, listening, really listening, made a huge amount of difference.
Yeah, and from a public information standpoint, establishing that reliable and predictable information to the local media and then national media as available. Some of my basic tenets in public information and some of my beliefs coming into this job, or a few of my basic principles, was availability and responsiveness to the media. That was a promise I gave them whenever I came here, and they really it's like water, or it's like air to breathe or water to drink, in the desert. When they are thrust into this situation where they're charged with covering something, it's partly my responsibility to educate them on what they're seeing that we're doing, and establishing that they felt safe, that they would always have us available to get information. They would know where to get it. They would know what time to get it, and kind of easing that fear. I strongly believe that played into the way that they covered it. And I think it made their coverage as good as it possibly could be.
And we also, and we didn't talk a whole lot about this today, but some of our tactical commanders and other people on this department reached out to some of the protest organizers and started to build relationships with them, because we're not getting anywhere when we're just standing on a line yelling at each other face to face. When we're talking to each other and we're listening to each other, I think that's huge. That calmed tensions during really critical moments when things could have turned really bad, or we relied on those relationships when officers went up and had conversations with people and got to know them. And, some of those, like our captain still has lunch and text messages, one of the people that he met during that time and formed a relationship with. And that was really critical to have. It's like, we hear you, we're listening to you, and you can listen to us, and we'll have a real conversation. And then maybe, we don't burn things. So that was really important.
Yeah, like as an example, one of the protest organizers, so our captain came to us straight from tactical response or SWAT command. He was assigned there previously. And what they would always do when there was a protest is they would go to the protest organizer ahead of time. They would say, here's our expectations of you. What do you need from us? How many people are you going to have? Do you want us to arrest you? All of these things. We would work through this. We would have organized arrests. We would do all of this. That was second nature to Dave. He did it hundreds of times. And so when we had this impromptu several thousand people break out, he naturally just identified one of the organizers and he took him aside and he just talked to him man to man, as a person, and, heard him a little bit.
He brought him to the media briefing.
And one of the second night, I told you, we kind of controlled the narratives in our hourly briefings. And a lot of times we would pick the topic. Henry was especially spirited at one point in time in the evening, and Dave says, come with me, I got some people you can talk to. Dave and Henry stood side by side at our hourly briefing, and we just gave him a voice, and the media loved it. He loved his opportunity. He wouldn't have had that otherwise. And so little things like that provided, it didn't fix everything, but there were certainly some times of tension that were calmed with some just person-to-person conversations.
It opened up the lines of communication.
Correct. I don't know if we could have successfully been safe to take a step back on Monday night or to take more of a hands-off approach going forward had we not had just a minimal relationship / conversation with some of these organizers.
Right. Well, I think you guys handled it again, like I said, reading the article and it'll be in the show notes so everybody can go back and link to it and read it if they haven't seen it yet. But they do need to read it. Any PIO needs to understand how important this article is and how you guys handle these things, because these are things we're all going to see. I don't think Diane Waugh thought that Dion Waugh was going to see an officer get killed and 9 other people get killed in her department. She just got hired there. I interviewed for the position she had. Yeah. I interviewed for that position. I was in the running with Dion. She eventually got it. So believe me, and
she's a friend of ours.
Yeah. So when
Dion's a good friend of ours.
You don't ever want to see somebody have to go through that, and it's going to happen. What you guys went through, some towns may never see, but we all know that with the climate right now, there's that high potential for it to happen. It's just the nature of the way the world is towards policing right now, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right. So let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's go to some freestyle questions or some rapid fire questions. All right. And then we'll end this on a good note. So last good book you guys have read.
She's a better reader than I am.
I had to have some mental escapism during all of this and got really into romantic comedy novels. But I also really enjoy, I'm in the middle of a book right now called Revolt of the Public by Martin Gurry. He's a former CIA agent, and it's kind of about how the internet has led to a reduction of respect for authority around the world. Sometimes it's for good things, like what happened, like in Egypt, toppling those, dictatorships and regimes. Sometimes it leads to bad things. So that's been really eye-opening.
I read fewer books. I read more magazine articles, publications, and things like that. I am in the middle of a book right now. It's called Wrapped Up in Blue. Of course, it's a cop book. It's by Rosa Brooks. She's a lawyer. She does research. She's been a policy administrator in presidential administrations. And she's also a reserve police officer with the Washington, D.C. Police Department. She has written a book about her exploration into that and the kind of the dynamic between her background and getting into the field of policing with this in this time of social unrest, social justice. So it's been pretty eye-opening.
Very good. Very good. Favorite sports?
Sarah looks at me. I'll answer all of this one. Sarah's not a
I have
sports.
some sports I like.
To watch football, diehard Chiefs fan. To play or be part of golf. If I am not here at work and the weather is nice, you will find me on the golf course.
You also watch a lot of golf.
I also watch golf too. Yeah, watch.
I like, my favorite sport to watch is hockey. We have a minor league hockey team here that I like to go. My dad and I have been going to see since I was a kid. It's really fun. But it is most fun to follow our Kansas City Chiefs, especially the last few years.
I agree. Yeah, we could have had that quarterback. I don't know what we were doing.
Yeah, no, you
I know. All right, so I got a question about sports. Who put out the tweet about I think it was Royals several years ago that said you guys got to be quiet so we're watching the game?
That was me.
Yep.
That was me. I was listening to that game on AM radio in my house because I don't have cable, and I was just sitting up, looking at my phone while I was listening, and I was like, and I was texting with some officers out there and on the streets, and I was like, you know what? I bet they'd be really pissed if they had to be at a call right now. They want to hear how this game ends, and it was a wild card game, I believe, and it was a crazy ending. So yeah,
she's had some dreams.
I follow you guys. I've been following you guys for years, and I saw that tweet, and I was like, oh, I got to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, simple one: bourbon, scotch, beer, or wine?
Yes.
All of the above.
No, I like it. My wife and I, we collect some wine, so I enjoy a good glass of wine. The bourbon scotch is much more rare, but on occasion. And then when it gets warmer at a baseball game or football game, a cold beer is fantastic.
I'm a fruity, girly drink person. Like, as long as it just tastes like fruit and I can't taste the alcohol, then I'll tap it.
Very good. Personal motto. Do you guys have one?
Okay, well, so mine kind of blends into professional. It's mess up, fess up, and move on. So it's kind of my PR strategy as well. Like, if I mess up or our organization messes up, I explain what's wrong with it. I fess up, say, yep, I know that was wrong. We know that didn't align with our values. And move on is kind of how I explain, I'm not going to do this again. We're not going to do this again. Here's what we put in place, some quality control measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. Or here, if it's in my, personal relationships with my husband, like, tell me again if I start acting like this, and I'll try to change course.
So I'm a big 7 Habits person. I believe in, mission statements. My personal mission statement is people first. So just very simple. And I would say that qualifies as a personal motto as well.
Absolutely. If you could spend a day in someone else's shoes, whose would they be and why?
You go first.
Okay. Well, my first inclination is to say my cat's, because he gets to sleep all day and relax. And I have like little kids, so sleep is at a premium for me. But I would also say, like, I want to go somewhere where there's cool history stuff. I probably want to be Kate Middleton. I think it would be great to be like in the royal family for a day, because you don't want to live that life. But I think it'd be fun to see what that's all about.
I used to say any professional golfer. I have to qualify it now. Most professional golfers. It doesn't matter who. But to be able to go play golf for a living and travel around to cool places where the weather is always warm because of the way the schedule is. And that's your job. I know there's grind. I know there's stress with that, but I think that'd be pretty cool.
Okay. If you could do anything, I would blank.
Golf. Golf professionally. Yeah.
Also, be in the royal family for a little bit, but I would want to. Like, my dream is to create like a Twitter account that trolls the people that troll us.
That would be phenomenal.
That would be so fun.
With no consequences.
With no consequences.
Yes, that would be good. I want to do that.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
You would do neither.
No, a million out of a million, I would climb a mountain before I would jump from a plane.
Like, I've hiked in the Rockies, but not like rock climbing, hiking. But I would, that's tough. I think I'd like to do like that. I think it'd be a bucket list thing to jump out of a plane. He's terrified of heights, but I think it'd be pretty cool.
My dad did that with my brother for my dad's 80th birthday.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, and he's got this old World War II pilot's like it's almost like a helmet, but it's not a helmet, and he jumped out. I'm like, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And they're like, aren't you gonna go? I'm not. No, I'm not getting on a plane.
Yeah.
No. I'm not leaving the plane.
I would try.
All right. So, final thoughts. Anything else you want to share?
No. I appreciate the feedback. We write an article like this or something that gets sent out there, and you always kind of wonder, who reads that or who takes that in. And I am super honored that you read it and thought that it would be valuable information to discuss further with your listeners. Again, we were just kind of muddling along, and we got lucky in some places, and I'm super honored to be featured in that article and to be able to talk to you about it today.
Yeah, same. It's great. I would say one thing we've learned in the last few years is the value of networks and how we rely on each other during these times. Throughout that process and that summer, we were in constant contact with PIOs in other cities that we know. Like I said, we're friends with Dion. Hey, how are you guys handling this? How's it going? And we've lifted each other up. We've seen what happens when people don't have the training and the support that those networks provide. Pretty recently, we've seen some of that.
We did.
So,
Atlanta.
so it's, exactly. So I just want to say that we're out there. The IACP PIO section is a favorite of mine, Major City Chiefs. There's so many of those that are available to help. I took a call from an officer in another city who is in a fairly decent sized city, who is the whole PIO section. I mean, she does everything, and she felt so alone and so overwhelmed. And to let her know that like at your own organization, like Jake was saying, you can feel on an island, and to know that there are other people out there who are struggling with the same things you are and doing the same jobs you are is so it's so reassuring when you feel alone and lost, and that there's someone else out there who's probably dealt with this, and you can ask
There's
them.
definitely someone out there that has dealt with it and something similar, and they can always give you some sage advice to help you get through it. So absolutely.
Yep.
So how can people best reach out to you guys if they want to get in contact with you? And I will put that in the show notes, so you don't need to worry about saying it on here. I mean, I can always add it in, but.
Sure.
Okay.
Our emails are probably the best. So I think you have both our work emails.
I'll add them on the show notes.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. It's my personal Twitter, but people reach out to me on it. So it's just at my first name and last name, Jake Becchina, just at Jake Becchina.
And if you want to send a message to the KCPD Facebook page, I monitor those as well.
Yeah, you can say, hey, Sarah. Yeah.
I'll get that.
Well, very good.
But yeah, those are all good ways. Yeah.
Very good, guys. I appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this. I know this is, it's been a very trying year for law enforcement across the country.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate your time.
Take care, guys.
All right, you too.
Bye.
See ya.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.